The third quarter gross domestic product reading follows an acceleration to 0.6% in the second quarter from the 0.4% reported in the first quarter of this year, despite global economic hurdles. Economist Dr Roelof Botha joins us now to expand on this discussion. Thank you once again for your time, Dr. Botha. The consensus is that a slowdown is expected in GDP this time around. Do you agree, and talk us through the dynamics?
Yes, the economy has been under a bit of pressure, as we all know, especially in November, but that's now part of the fourth quarter, so let's stick to what we could expect from the third quarter. Load shedding, to the best of my knowledge, was not as severe in the third quarter, and the bad news, especially with regard to the containers in Durban, it must be terribly frustrating for importers and exporters to have to wait weeks on end to get their shipments off or to offload their shipments. The incompetence at some of our ports is just breathtaking, and we have been told that there will be some form of privatization, private sector involvement through a firm in the Philippines, but we're waiting. We're playing the waiting game, South Africa. But on a positive note, I think what most economists have missed is that we have all-time record imports of machinery and equipment in South Africa. And construction sector employment is taking off like a rocket, which is great news. There is certainly a lot happening with a new capital formation by the private sector and also on the infrastructure side to some extent. And there's certainly light in the tunnel, preferably and otherwise, with the fact that Kusile 2, 1 and 2 are both operational right now. But it takes a longer time to pull them off because of the heat wave. So it's this to and fro all the time between some positives, some really important positives, and some negatives.
It's definitely a two-sided coin of a story to tell there, Dr. Botha, but to what extent can we attribute South Africa's economic challenges, particularly the structural ones, where state-owned entities are meant to be running efficiently, as shooting itself in the foot? Because with the economic growth, the revisions that we've gotten so far this year, they have not been positive.
Yes, 34, I get on that. I just want to correct the previous contribution that said that we are not yet back where we were before COVID with employment. That is not true. If you take the quarterly labour force survey of Statistics SA as your source of data, which is, to the best of my knowledge, the one that is the most acceptable in South Africa, the good news is that total employment in the third quarter of this year, at the end of the third quarter, was very close to 16.8 million people, and that is considerably higher than the same quarter in 2018, when it was 16.4 million. We created, in the third quarter, 400,000 new jobs in this country, most of them in the formal sectors. And there is a very reliable and predictable correlation between labour remuneration and the GDP of this country. It currently stands at a ratio of about 45.2%. So on that basis alone, I've got no doubt that we will have positive growth in the third quarter. Getting back to the incompetence of the state-owned enterprises, this is just shocking that government apparently still has not realized. It's been told to them by so many different organizations, research organizations, including the Harvard report, that cadre deployment has had a debilitating effect on this economy. Because in many instances, not in all, but in many instances, people have been appointed that do not have the required background, theoretically and with regard to experience, to run or be involved in the management of these state-owned enterprises. And the evidence is all over the show. It is through load shedding. It's at potholes in the roads. What has been happening at even Sanral of late, with all kinds of tricks with bringing Chinese construction firms into South Africa and postponing tenders left, right and center, not to mention Durban Harbour. So really, it is time that transformation gets put on the back burner, and efficiency and appointments on merit, whatever your cultural background, that gets precedence. And if that can happen, then we can go places in this country. And working together, there are other options for transformation, like mentorship. Appoint the right person to do the job, and then get somebody with regard to the transformation issues to assist him and to learn by doing. From how do you operate a harbour? I believe that Transnet doesn't have a clue, quite frankly.
Lastly, Dr. Botha, as we head towards the 2024 elections, what's to be said about economic growth being maybe the litmus test that is required for voter apathy, given that it paints a picture of the South African economy not advancing, and it's been decades of reforms that we hear about in rhetoric only?
Yes, at least there has been some progress since 2018. What I think that the viewers must not forget is that we had a decade of state capture and graft and corruption and plain old-fashioned theft on a grand scale in this country under the previous president of South Africa. It's going to take some time to undo that, but the pace of reform and recovery is very slow, admittedly. And now that the Constitutional Court has made a ruling which is really bad news for the government, they are going to have to get their act together very quickly to prove to South Africa that they can actually run a country from a macroeconomic perspective, from managing the economy. Countries fail dismally, like Zimbabwe, like Venezuela, when you choose the wrong policies. In the cases of Zimbabwe and Venezuela, by nationalizing your pivotal industries with pervasive supply chains. In South Africa, we have not had nationalization, and I like to believe, and I hope and pray that we never have. But we need to get our act together with regard to telling South Africa that transformation is good and well, but right now we have to look at efficiency and effectiveness. And it can be done. This country has all the resources. It has the skills. But it doesn't help you if you bottle up those skills. And this cork is called transformation. Unloose. Get rid of that cork, please.
Thank you as always for your contribution. That's where we'll leave it with Dr. Roelof Botha there in our preview of the expected GDP numbers from StatsSA expected later today.